To welcome author, political activist, political blogger, and Ready Show host Egberto Willies. Want to welcome you to On Point with Juandolyn Stokes. How are you today? Hello.
Here on WAOK. Love to be with you. You guys are doing great work.
Thank you so much. And certainly you are as well, Mr. Willies. We're certainly glad to have you here. Why would you say, why are we having this conflict? Why is there a Russian-Ukrainian conflict?
Okay, the official answer from Russia is simple, right? Mm-hmm. They believe that the eastward expansion of NATO, in other words, all those old Soviet republics and countries that were of the Warsaw Pact, guess where they're ending up? They're ending up as part of NATO. Mm-hmm. And they are claiming, that is, the Russians are claiming that somehow that is a problem for NATO to encroach on their territory, right up against their borders. So their belief is that, look, that has got to stop. They don't want NATO up on their borders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, again, notice that I earlier said that is the pretext. And the reason I state that is the pretext because we know superpowers or major powers, there are many reasons they do things, but they always try to find that pretext. That particular pretext, while partially true, I don't buy it.
What do you buy then? What is the real reason? Because they say one thing, but then it's something different.
Right. If I may I give a context with the United States first?
Yes.
Let's go under the assumption that Russia came on the United States-Canadian border and on the Mexican border. What would our reaction be? I think we would be concerned. We may go ahead and say that. Why exactly? What's your reason for coming there? And if you don't give us the satisfactory reason, we may get belligerent. Russia is using that pretext with Ukraine. However, the truth of the matter is there isn't a business interest for any of the NATO countries to get on Russia's border to invade that country at all. More so, Putin is a nationalistic, macho kind of guy that wants to revive what used to be the old Soviet Union. And let's also remember that Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe, a part of Europe. They grow a lot. They have a lot of natural resources. So grabbing back onto Ukraine is bringing more power to Russia, and keeping Ukraine on the Western side means, well, there's yet another Western country, a democratic country that can compete with Russia.
What do you think with other nations supporting Ukraine? What do you think that the role of the U.S. should be?
I have a whole lot of mixed answers there, right? Because we have to mix more than just look. I think it is absolutely wrong, in my humble opinion. I think it's violent. I think it is savagery what Russia is doing to the Ukrainian people, innocent children, innocent women. But there is an interesting thing that came out of what's occurring in Ukraine that shows sort of the bad side of humanity, right? Okay. There are a lot of Nigerians and Jamaicans and other people of color in Ukraine. And these people in Ukraine who want the rest of the world to come to their aid because they are so being maligned, attacked savagely by Russia, they're displaying some of the same ills that many of us fight against. In other words, Nigerians are having a hard time getting out. We take a look at I'll leave this other part for another question. But so as far as what the United States should do, I think, bluntly, Biden is playing it right. I don't want any of our soldiers going into Ukraine and treat Ukraine as some great benevolent country and spill blood on their behalf. Help them get out of the sticks with Russia? Yes. But are there a lot of countries in the Middle East, a lot of countries in Africa, where some dominant power is also affecting them, brutalizing them, etc.? I don't see it make the news, or I don't see us down there. So I think Biden is playing his cards fairly well. So, but I have more to say after, when you come back with it.
But sometimes presidents or leadership will immediately respond and take some type of action. But with President Biden, he's just kind of holding steady for a moment. Would you say that he's just kind of watching to see as things continue to unfold there in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't see a reason, right? I mean, look, the devastation and the carnage is horrendous in Ukraine. But I would posit, my friend, that it is also horrendous in a lot of other places. And why should we choose to really come to the absolute defense and spill the blood of Americans for the Ukrainians? And not for, let's say, some Africans in Yemen or other places. We aren't there, and Russia is bombing the holy hell out of these people as well, and we don't do anything. Is it something we should do there as well?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So would you say this is war? This is politics? What is this?
It is a Ukrainian-Russian war. Yes. It is a war between Ukraine and Russia. Is it something that we should get involved in? Well, a lot of people like to talk about the domino effect. Mm-hmm. The domino effect where, okay, Russia is going to take Ukraine, and if they don't fight back, he eventually will start going, let's say, west towards Poland, and eventually he's going to get to Germany and France and all. That's a domino theory, and Hitler did it, right? So I mean, there's some precedents for that. You said it best. You said, do you think the president is kind of just watching? Yes, ma'am. I think he's watching, and if it seems like Russia tries to become a preeminent power that eventually will, do us harm, then maybe we act. But this stuff about acting early to defend a Ukraine, I don't think, my personal opinion is that it's warranted.
Mr. Willies, with all of these lives and casualties and just a continued conflict with a lot of refugees trying to get out and to cross over, would you consider Russia's attack a war crime?
Oh, yes. Absolutely a war crime. What Russia is doing is absolutely a war crime. When they're bombing private buildings, I mean, we have on video where a missile comes right into a high-rise apartment building and knock it out. When we hear about children getting killed in the middle of the streets, in hitting military targets, they have been unsuccessful. That the Ukrainians are very good fighters. These are war crimes.
WAOK, speaking with our very special guest, author, political activist, political blogger, and radio show host, Egberto Willies. He has a podcast called Politics Done Right, and he's authored many books. We're glad to have you sharing with us today. I'm going to go to our phone lines, Mr. Willies. We've got, Quincy from Gwinnett. He has a question or comment. Go ahead, Quincy. Welcome.
Hey, Juandolyn, how you doing? Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
And to the gentleman, sir, I got a question for you. So I'm listening to everybody talk about this with Russia and Poland and the possibility of war with the United States. I'm not the sharpest knife in the bunch, and hopefully you can explain it to me. So here it is that we as the United States have a budget of $700+ billion that goes to funding weapons, yada, 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 yada. So what is the main interest or the main concern with the U.S. for anything that Russia do within the parameters of Poland? And I'll hang up and listen. Thank you for taking my call.
Hold tight a second, Quincy. Okay. I think our guest got disconnected, and we're going to try to get him back on the line. Let's see. Let me check and see.
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, all right. Quincy, will you ask your question again? He dropped off by mistake, so go right ahead and ask your question again, okay?
Yes, sir. With Russia being as small as it is, in the United States, we have a budget of $700+ billion. right, that we contribute to our military. We have the most technological military in the world, right? And I'm not the sharpest knife in the bunch. But one, I'm kind of confused why Americans is creating this narrative of being worried about Russia. And given the fact that Poland isn't part of the UN, why are we even discussing it? And I'll hang up and listen.
Wow, that's an excellent question. Let me first just say one thing, right? The United States is not scared of Russia per se from an economic standpoint, but I mean, everyone should be scared of anybody who has a nuclear weapon, including being scared of the United States. After all, the United States was the only country that proved it had the wherewithal to use a nuclear weapon on human beings. So anybody, and we know what damage it causes. So any country that has the ability to either use a nuclear bomb or to get its hands on nuclear material that can be spread uncontrollably, we should fear. So we don't fear Russia per se. What we fear is what can happen if they get pissed off and start to throw dirty bombs and all that kind of stuff. And that's why diplomacy has to reign. As far as getting involved, I am with you, sir. I think we just need to, first of all, if we wanted to get involved, we could annihilate the entire planet many times over as the United States of America. By the way, as small as Russia is, so could they. So diplomacy is in order. But as far as us going as a people to go and defend the Ukraine per se, I am not for that. I don't think any of us should be for that. If you give me a chance to answer that in another little piece here, because this irks me, right? We have a lot of people of color in Ukraine, and in as much as they're being attacked, and many of our soldiers who would actually go in there to protect them are people of color, these people of color are being discriminated on even in a war zone, which I think is a very problematic thing, and prove that the benevolence that we want to preach about these Ukrainians and how great they are, they have the same ills and sicknesses of prejudice against a particular hue than just about everybody else. So I hope I answered your question, sir.
Yeah, and I think that's what's being exposed and revealed to the world. Kenny out of Atlanta has a question or comment for you, Mr. Willies. Go right ahead, Hi. Kenny.
All right, how y'all doing today?
Good. How are you?
The point I want to make is America has no moral standing in the world. Putin watched American politicians go 7,000 miles away and bomb and destroy Iraq. Putin saw American politicians kill 500,000 people in Iraq. Putin watched the American politician capture and kill the president of Iraq, and then Putin watched American politician bomb and destroy the African country of Libya, and Putin watched American politician help kill the president of Libya. Putin has watched American politicians kill and invade people. Not just Putin, the whole world has watched this. So America has no moral standing in the world. American politicians, they bomb hospitals, they bomb schools, they bomb business in Iraq and Libya. They knocked out the power grid for like about 2 years. The people in Iraq didn't have any power. So when you look at the evil that America has done around the world, America has no moral standing in the world. 60 years ago, Dr. King was speaking out against American foreign policy. Dr. King was talking about how terrible American foreign policy was. Malcolm X was talking about how terrible. So when you look at Iraq, that was America and British politicians. America and Britain teamed up together. They destroyed a whole country, killed 500,000 people, left 5 million orphans in Iraq. When the world haven't forgot about that. So how can America has absolutely no moral standing? So actually Putin is doing what he saw the American politicians doing. That's my comment.
Thanks a lot, Kenny. What do you say, Mr. Willies?
Ms. Stokes, this is the first time I'm appearing on your show. And all I have to say about the caller that the person who just called in is you ought to be proud of the level of intellect of the people that call into your show. I could say it no better than he did, but let's up the ante a bit more. I am from Central America, Panama originally, and 10,000 Panamanians were killed. You won't see it in the books when the United States invaded Panama, but that's not the subject. I am with the brother who called. However, the subject is we know what America has done, but you know what? We are humane people, and we don't want hurt on anybody, no matter when, where, or what.
Right, right. And definitely don't want that to happen. Also, when you talk about this whole political equation, when you talk about the U.S., what is this political equation that we are really involved in, even in this country today?
Can you repeat that? I kind of got dropped.
You know, what's the political equation that we are facing today as a country, even as we look at what's happening there in Ukraine, but what's the real political equation that we're really having to deal with?
Well, you're not sure how many people are going to like the real political equation. The equation is money. The political equation is the easiest way for a particular sector in this country, the defense industrial complex, and President Eisenhower spoke about this, is that, wherever there's war and we can make a good profit of, war is one interesting thing. It's replicatable, right? We bomb places, you have to replace the bombs and you have to replace the buildings. It's one of the great places to have a group of people, capital, to make a whole lot of money. The equation for America is money. Again, the equation for America is always money in these issues, and that's why we don't have a problem going around the world blowing things up. But again, I think you asked me about Ukraine. When it comes to Ukraine, my heart goes out as a human being to these people and saying, I don't want, and as much as they have the same diseases we have with racism, etc., I don't want them going through the same.
Mr. Willies says it's about money. It's not about people. It's about money. Let's go to a new caller out of Sandy Springs. Linda, welcome to the conversation. Egberto Willies is our very special guest. Go right ahead with your question or comment.
Hi, Juandolyn.
Hi.
Anybody that wants to know anything about the Ukraine, they can go to blackagendareport.com. They have an article, very in-depth article about what's happening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Linda.
Thanks for that info.
Yeah, stay healthy, stay connected, stay on point. Maggie out of Atlanta. Hi, welcome.
Hey, I'm glad y'all talking about. I'm not upset with the military and people who've been. I'm a veteran. I came in the Vietnam War. I'm not. We got to understand. If you're right, it's all about money. It's always going to be about money. Every 15 years, every 20 years, it ain't going to be Ukraine. It's going to be somebody else. So United States people in the United States need to wake up, because they don't understand. A lot of things happen in other countries that we don't know about. Is money, defense. They want to put more money in defense. So my thing is, people forget. Years go by, every 15 years, every 20 years, we're going to have a country that we're going to attack. We don't need them, or we want some money or oil. People forgot about the Vietnam War. After that war, then people didn't realize Desert Storm and all that. The oil. We had a one-day war back in after the Vietnam War. Nobody didn't know nothing about it. They say war conflict, because we were going to go over to the country. And then we start Desert Storm. They know what they going to do. They know who they going to attack later on in years. And that's how if it's going to be, it's going to be another country. So my thing is that it's money. They don't care about us. It's about money. And who going to fight these wars? Poor. That's who's going to fight these wars. They children, Republicans not going to go to war. That's all I have to say. And have a blessed day.
All right. Thanks, Maggie. Mr. Willies, your response to that.
Like I said about your audience are well informed, because
Yes.
There's a whole lot of truth to what she had to say, and that is, let's put some context to what she just said, because she's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
What just happened? We just left Afghanistan. In leaving Afghanistan, what did that mean? That meant that the defense industrial complex was left with a big hole in the amount of money for them to make. Hey, another war is kind of cool for us to get involved in. We just sent $385 million to Ukraine, and we're allocating a few more $1 billion to put in there. Let me ask you this, Ms. Stokes. Imagine if we decided to call the poverty both in our barrios, our ghettos, our Appalachia, suppose we called that a war and invested the kind of money that always comes easy for war into those communities, into people, wouldn't that make a whole lot more sense? A friend of mine or a listener to my show sent me an essay, and he said, why is America so quick in defending the democracy of Ukraine and so slow in defending the democracy of the United States? There in Atlanta, you have a senator that is running against a system, a voting system that is currently stacked against him in Georgia. It's amazing that we don't open up the discussion that way as you are right here on your show.
Well, do you think we'll ever get to a place where government will be about the people and not as focused on the money? When you bring up that case, for example, you look at poverty, you look at homelessness, you look at food insecurity, and not much attention given there from the government. But the focus is on war because I guess there's more money to be made. Like when you brought up that example, it makes common sense, S-E-N-S-E, but it doesn't make sense. C-E-N-T-S. So do you think that we can shift to that perspective with government or we perhaps may never get there?
No, let me tell you where I am, Ms. Stokes. Okay. And it goes as far as this. The work that you are doing, the work that a lot of other independent journalists are doing is invaluable. The fact that Georgia turned out a Jewish man and a black man in a period where we have this amount of anti-Semitism and supremacy in the country says that your job is getting done, and yes, it can be done. The question is, are we going to keep the people sufficiently active to ensure they understand the power that we still have? One person, one vote. They're trying to take it away, but we still have it. If all of us that are in this independent media space do our job and encourage people and keep them, letting them know that there is going to be some backsliding, but you have to keep looking forward, as MLK would have said, or Malcolm X, or all the other leaders of the past would have said, you have to keep looking forward. Can government change? Yeah. You know why? Because we are government and we can get them the hell out of there with the people that we want to put in there.
Yeah, putting the right people in place and position. Want to get your comments on this whole pandemic and how the U.S. has handled it and in comparison to other countries. What are your thoughts on this? Is this another part of the government system? Okay.
We have proven in America. First of all, America used to be a country that's looking forward in intellect and many other ways. We, by design, have been promoting ignorance. In other words, we have a select group of very smart, intelligent people in high places dependent on making people stupid. And that's by design. Because you cannot have an intelligent group of people that continue to support an economic system that completely says, I'm going to pay you some and we're going to take most, which is what this country is all about. It's an ultimate definition of unfettered capitalism. So when people get smarter, they realize that, and this stuff about the pandemic, they need to keep people fighting at each other. So the pandemic was a good excuse to create factions. It's not about that a lot of those guys are going to die. It's going to be about we are going to keep that permanent factionization so that these people don't get themselves smart among each other to eventually take over a system that they realize is not there for them, but to make a profit for a very select few of people who are invited into the system. It's not a meritocracy. You have to be invited into the system.
And that's what it has been. It's been a fraction since we've been in the midst of this pandemic. Because even as you're looking at it, when you look at the economy, when you look at the housing market, it's still that fraction. And that's what's spreading. That's what's growing. And this classism that's happening between this group, this smaller group that is making more profits, and this other group that is really barely making it and certainly not progressing and being successful. Let's go to break.
It's called antiseptic slavery.
I love it. I love how you define that. Mr. Willies, we got to go back. I just want you elaborate on just a little bit more? Antiseptic slavery is how you referred to it. Elaborate on that a little more.
Okay, slavery, first of all, I don't want to deny the nastiness, the crudeness that black people, those of us that came over here on the slave trade had to go through in the United States and elsewhere around. I'm from Panama, so the slave trade all over the darn world, right?
Yeah.
But we have to acknowledge it as an economic system, a capitalist economic system in which these black bodies were the ones chosen to be capital. Now, remember this. In the past, during slavery, we had to be fed, we had to be clothed, we had to be given health care, we had to have all those things because it's not that anybody cared about our humanity. They cared about us living to do the job to make the master a profit. Well, after slavery, some would think, oh my God, there's something wrong. Things would go haywire. No, slavery got expanded after slavery, but it was no longer a black and white thing. In other words, the black and white thing was kept to keep the master more powerful. So now they employed people, black and white. Mm-hmm. They kept the racism alive because if we're fighting each other, we can't fight those who are using us as economic pawns. They pay us as little as they can. They don't give us health care. They don't feed us. They don't house us. They do none of that, right? Mm-hmm. So, in effect, we had a new form of slavery known as antiseptic slavery, in which now it's not only black people that are slaves, white people are slaves. They just don't know it because they keep that distinction that they believe. At least I'm not black. At least I'm not a POC. At least I have my whiteness, but I'm nonetheless a slave.
I see. Cliff out of Connecticut. Go right ahead. Our guest is here with your question. Cliff from Connecticut. Are you here?
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Through you to your guest, you just mentioned racism. And so my question is, obviously it exists. This is white racism. So does black racism exist in this country?
I had to be schooled about black racism, okay? And the reason I had to be schooled is you asked a very important question, all right? And I used to always say, black people can be just as racist as white people. Now, I was schooled into understanding that racism came, the classical definition of racism in the United States come with that selection, that inclusion of power. So if you include power with it, in the classic case, the average black person as being powerless can't be racist. They can be prejudiced. They can be a person who don't like white people or don't like Asians or whatever, but being racist per se as the classic definition, no. I had to be able to absorb that. I mean, I still have a problem dealing with that, but again, since it's a classical belief of how racism is taught in this country, I've learned to adapt.
If I can just add to that, you're totally right. If I can just add to that, the issue in terms of power and oppression, and simply black people get confused and they get whitewashed and brainwashed because simply what white person wants to be claimed or wants to admit that they're a racist. So they'll turn around and say that black people are racist based on the dislike or hate, to perceive hate towards white people, and black people simply just don't have hate in them. If anything, they hate what was done to us historically, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me, but I'm going to disagree with you with one item, my brother. I think human beings all are the same, but we're conditioned by externalities. That's my thought. I mean, I love people of every race, every culture, everything. I think we're conditioned differently. I don't think racism is a genetic thing because I've seen evil done by all kinds of people. So I agree with your basic premise. I just want to say I don't think that innately somehow we're not. Just my thought.
Well, I would simply say in closing, and thank you for taking my call. In closing, I think that we as a black people have more dislike and hatred towards each other than we do white people. So again, you have to equate the element or the criteria or the characteristics of power and oppression and resources.
Yes.
And we simply don't have that in America to oppress the opposite or white people. That does not exist. Thank you for taking my call.
We've learned.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I answer?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Stokes?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say is that our interracial, and I don't even believe in race, but I'm a black man, right? But our interracial hate is a taught thing, right? That's what the master taught us. It's the same thing that goes with intergender hate. I once said, and most of the people who attacked me were black women. I once said that that sexism is actually worse than racism, because you can get sexism in a black church, in a white church, in Muslim religions, in all these different areas, but black racism is left somewhere else. I got attacked for that, but I still think I hang by the premise that there are a lot of isms there, and what we really should be working toward is getting rid of all the isms.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. James out of Atlanta. Hi, welcome. Go right ahead. Our guest is on the line. James?
Yes, sir. Juandolyn. I'd just like to get your guest comment on this. 4 months into Trump's presidency, he invited the Russian foreign minister, and the Russian ambassador into the Oval Office, and disinvited the U.S. media. But he also invited the Putin's spy media into the Oval Office. Approximately a year later, he had a closed-door meeting with Putin, and I think then we're talking about nuclear weapons. And a couple of years after that, Trump pulled the United States out of the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. He also, months before he left office, pulled the United States out of the Open Skies Treaty, and then in that process, during that period of time, Putin was adding the finishing touches to some of his weapons, nuclear weapons, one being the hypersonic missiles that can fly 27 times faster than the speed of sound. And another one is the submarine nuclear missile, which is known as the Doomsday device, powered by a nuclear reactor. So during this period of time, was Putin's plan to pull us out of those treaties, leading up to what is happening now with Ukraine. And also during that time, Trump defunded the military by pulling billions of dollars from the military to send over to build a wall at the Mexican-U.S. border. So I think this has all been planned up until this point. But the major question is, what does Putin have on Trump?
Okay, most of us in the independent media have been saying that for a long time. Putin does have something on Trump, and Trump is a traitor to America. I would say that. I don't care if they attempted anything. I think Trump was a traitor to America. So I can't dispute everything that you've said. I don't know everything that you said factually, but I can't dispute it. So that's where I stand on that.
Thanks a lot, James. Thanks for calling in and asking your question. Thank you so much, Mr. Willies. This has been a very good conversation. That's why we love doing what we do, and I know you enjoy doing what you do as well. Please let our audience know how they can read your blogs and also listen to your podcasts and your shows and follow you and even get your book.
Great. I appreciate the opportunity to say that, Ms. Stokes. You can follow me on Twitter. Go to Egberto Willies. It is EGBERTO WILLIES. You can also go to politicsdoneright.com to watch our show every day. It comes on at 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern. And you can visit my blog at Egberto Willies, EGBERTO WILLIES.com. I'd love to have you there. We love conversation. Come on over, and we love that what WAOK is doing here with Ms. Stokes.
Well, thank you so very much for sharing and taking out the time to be a part of this wonderful conversation. And keep speaking out and speaking up for us all.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.